Jesus, I trust in you. Take care of everything. Hi, my name is David, and I wanted to speak to you today. This is a little different from anything I've done before. I felt really led to just speak to you from my heart. There's so much going on. I have a lot of things in my heart right now, a lot of thoughts in my mind. And it became very clear to me that I needed to do this, especially when I was at Mass today. Now, this video is directed towards men. I wanted to address all the Catholic and Christian men out there who are striving to live as men of God. We don't hear a lot about this anymore. In fact, we don't hear much about masculinity, nor do we even hear about femininity anymore. So I wanted to take this time and address some important topics on how do we live as men of God. You know, I remember one of the first times that I allowed myself to be emotionally moved by Jesus was when I read a book by Father Larry Richards, Be a Man. You know, because I felt like I couldn't do it. I wasn't allowed to because I'm a man. And I couldn't allow myself to be emotionally moved by Jesus. That's not what men do. Most of you know that I experience same-sex attractions, and I have been chased for a number of years by God's grace. But I lived a very active life, and there was a lot of wounds to my masculinity. And what I've learned is there's a lot of wounds to men in regards to masculinity. It's not just those who experience same-sex attractions. It's men. We as men have had wounds to our masculinity. What does that mean? It means that we have a distorted view of who we are as men. It means that we may have been wounded in our own view of who we are as men, or how we perceive others and how they view us. It means that we might have to feel like we have to always have a mask on and be the strong one, be the tough one. You know, when I was living an active gay life, I so much was looking for a masculine man. I wanted someone to save me, basically, from the pain and turmoil that I was going through. I was looking for a knight in shining armor. And I didn't recognize that I had masculinity within me. I think I needed it. I thought I needed it from someone else because I didn't possess it. And that was such a lie that I believed. You know, I thought that because I wasn't accepted by many of my male peers and picked last for teams on sports, and because I was told that they didn't want me on their team, I thought that I didn't have what it takes, that I didn't belong to the male world, that I wasn't one of the other boys. What I have since learned many years later is that little boy I once was masculine. And he believed some lies from the wounds of his own masculinity. Why do I say that that little boy believed lies? Because I can see now, little David, he He loved adventures. You know, he loved amusement parks and roller coasters and taking risks, climbing trees. You know, and although those are stereotypical, and of course, females also enjoy those things, same goes with sports. And I was putting this lie on me, thinking that I wasn't masculine because I wasn't accepted. So the masculine wound can affect all of us men. It doesn't matter who we're attracted to. It doesn't matter if we're attracted to women or if they're attracted to men. The masculine wound can really go right at our heart, and it can fill our hearts with shame. And it's important that we see that and recognize it. Because one of the things that we as humans tend to do, and this includes women, we tend to compare ourselves to others. But again, I'm speaking about men. That's what this talk's about. So we as men can compare ourselves to other men. Well, you know, I don't make as much money as this guy, or I'm not as good looking as that guy, or I don't have it together like this one. And whenever we do that, it causes shame. Now, for many of us with same-sex attractions who are living chaste lives or striving to live chaste lives, and for those of you that don't know what I mean by chaste, is simply living a pure life, trying to live the way Jesus asks us to live, according to his teachings in the Bible and according to the Catholic Church teaching as well. So those who struggle with trying to live a chaste life and having attractions to the same sex can find themselves comparing themselves to other men and wishing that, oh man, if only I looked like him, if only I had muscles like him, if only I was strong like him, if only I was masculine like him, if only I had that walk of confidence like he does. And whenever we do that, really what we're doing is we're coveting. And that can cause so many problems. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's same-sex attractions or opposite sex attractions. You know, when we compare ourselves to others in negative ways, for men with same-sex attractions that are striving to live purely and not act upon it, it can trigger us. And that attraction or coveting that's happening could trigger us, and because of the shame that's in our heart, we're not accepting who we really are, that we have what it takes. Maybe we're not as young, maybe we're older and not fit, but it doesn't take away from who we are as men. I want to go back for a moment. I spoke about how comparing ourselves to men can cause triggers to those who experience same-sex attractions. But what happens to men who have opposite sex attractions and they're comparing themselves to other men? Well, for us men, whenever we compare ourselves to other men, often what happens, and I've already said this, shame grows in our hearts. But what is shame? There's a couple views on this, and the one that I subscribe to, that I have seen play out in my life and the lives of many people, is that shame and guilt they appear to be similar, but they're not. Guilt is, I did something wrong, so I feel guilty. Shame is, I did something wrong. I am something wrong. See the difference there? And it cuts deep into our hearts. It cuts deep into who we are as men. It destroys. It chisels away at what we really believe, and it chisels away at the truth. And we start to accept lies that I'm not good enough. So, men with opposite sex attractions, because of the shame, might try to prove to themselves and to others that they have what it takes. And they might throw themselves into their job and just be, almost workaholics, trying to prove to themselves and to others. Or maybe the pain is so bad that they just need to medicate themselves, and they might turn to things like substances, alcohol or drugs, or pornography, or food, or Netflix, or womanizing, sex, all that stuff. So I wanted to just reach out to you men. Those of you that are struggling with same-sex attractions, and those of you that aren't. But mostly those men who are comparing themselves to other men instead of looking at what you really possess, because you have what it takes, especially if you have Christ in your life, because that's all that really matters. And I really encourage you to look at Christ. And it's not unmanly to look at a picture of him gazing, like this picture that I'm showing you right now. He's looking at you, and he's calling you. He's noticing you. He is seeing the you that's inside you. Everything about you is important to him. Everything. And he has called you by name. So don't believe the lies of our culture. Don't believe that you don't have what it takes. If you have God on your side, all things are possible. If you have Christ, that's all that matters. So I remember I started to tell you, and I got a little sidetracked, that I read a book by Father Larry Richards, called Be a Man. And it was the first time that I was kind of blown away by this. In chapter 2, it was all about the Heavenly Father's love for us as men. And that chapter went straight to my heart. You know how I long for Jesus to look at me and say, David, I love you. Well done, good and faithful servant. I am really hoping to hear those words. You can hear those words too. We need to be striving as men to do the best we can in being men of God. And part of that is recognizing that it's okay to feel. It's okay to long, to yearn. And I yearn so much for Christ. In that book, Father Larry Richards in chapter 2 spoke of how Isaiah 43, and the words are this: you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. That Father Larry Richards said he spoke of the journey of him taking those words and removing it basically from here in his mind and putting it right here. And it kind of blew me away to think that the creator of the universe, this really masculine Heavenly Father, looks at me and looks at you and says, you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. He was speaking to Jerusalem, I believe, but really he's speaking to all of us. That's you and me. And reading that in Father Larry's book was the first time it gave me permission to realize that as a man, I can look at Jesus that way. You know, that I can long for him to tell me those words. That it's okay to accept that from him. And it doesn't in any way take away from me as being a man. And being that I am a man who has experienced same-sex attractions and has been living chastely, I need to know that from him. You know, many of us as humans have not been affirmed. And this is men and women, regardless of attractions. Conrad Bars has done a lot of work in this, and he defines being affirmed not as, oh, I'm good, I'm okay, you know, I'm loved, by golly, I'm a good person. Not that kind of affirmation. He says affirmation is, and first he says that all children need to be affirmed by their parents, okay? And then he says what that means is the parent allows themselves to be moved emotionally by the goodness of that child, and then communicates it in such a way that that child knows it's true. That is true affirmation. And the Heavenly Father affirms us when he says, you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. Let's give up the lies. Let's take out the shame. Let's don't let shame control us. Let's live in the hope of Christ, in the truth of Christ, and be the men that we are, and the men that God is calling us to be. We can't do it on our own, but we can do it through him. All we have to do is trust in him. And like the picture shows, he's got his hand extended out to us. To me, it is grabbing hold of his hand and saying, yes, Jesus. Let's all say yes to Jesus. God bless you and have an awesome, fun-filled, blessing-filled day. Take care.